Welcome back to Not So Grand Garage. Today I'm out in the shop and got to get the front hubs replaced on the Cherokee. Also need to service the front end because I'm sure it's full of water. Excuse my voice, I'm not feeling that great. Fake spring is over and it's like 25 degrees out here, so of course that comes along with getting sick and everything else, but hey. Anyways, we're going to tear this down. It's not a hard job. I go through hubs on this thing probably once a year. So, yeah, it's pretty quick. Figured I'd show you how to do it. Let's get at it. Alright, got the front tires off, got the wheel spacer off, which, no, the wheel spacer isn't the cause of these wheel bearing failures. Running a hub-centric spacer like that is no different than running a wheel with the proper offset. I'm just running factory wheels because I'm cheap. So, anyways, first things first, I'm going to pull this cotter pin, pull the little security nut off there, and then get the main axle nut off, which I believe is either 32 or 36 millimeter. I'll have to check once I get that off. Then we'll pull the caliper, and then all that is left is drop the rotor off and pull the 3 bolts that hold the hub assembly to the knuckle, and it drops right off. We're going back with Timken's part number 513084. Sadly, no longer made in the US of A, but it is what it is. I have not been able to find hub assemblies that hold up to any kind of abuse on these Dana 30 run axles. TJs, ZJs, they're all the same pretty well. But hub assemblies seem to be their weak link besides axle shafts. This one's got chromoly shafts in it already. But yeah, the last set was SKF's. Killed one of those within 2 months. Replaced it with a Duralast because I had a trail ride coming. And that one held up just as long as this other SKF did. So this time we're going to go back with Timken's. We're going to torque the axle nut properly, which is important. Don't just gun it down with the impact. But yeah, if y'all know of any hub assemblies that actually hold up on these Dana 30s, yeah, let me know. But this is what we're going to use for now. Decided to go on and service the front diff first, or at least start draining the oil out of it, because I use a pretty heavy oil in it and it's really cold out. Now, I submarine this thing on a regular basis. It gets water over the hood, so I'm pretty sure the front diff's going to have water in it. That's kind of why I try to keep up on servicing the diffs. Try to do it every few trail rides. It's been a little bit longer than I like this time, so we'll see how much water's in it. Also, of course, also want to look for any metal or anything like that, because this is the original 230,000 mile differential. Original gear set. The only thing I've done is put a locker in it, which is just a lunchbox locker, nothing fancy. Oh yeah. That's thick stuff. I don't see any debris on the inside of the gear cover. I'm going to let this drain while we finish pulling apart the hub assemblies and getting those changed out. We'll take a look inside and see if I see any odd wear or odd damage. I don't think there's going to be, but yeah. Let's keep going. For cotter pins, side cuts work really well. Just roll the ears straight, then lightly get a hold of the eye side and just roll it out. Just don't squeeze too tight because you'll cut it, or if you want, you can lightly squeeze on it and tap it out with a hammer. Lock nut. Washer. 36mm socket. Big boy impact on full bore. And big washer. Maybe. Come on. Now you can see my axle shaft is loose, which I always coat the splines and the threads and everything with anti-seize before I put these back together. That way they come apart a lot easier when you have to service them. Next up, gonna pull the, oh yeah, this doesn't actually use a caliper mount. I'm an idiot. So we're gonna pull the caliper and then pull the rotor, pull the hub assembly. Caliper hardware, be sure to lubricate these when you put them back together. That way you don't end up with a sticky caliper over time. Well, come on. And the rotor's off. Now all that's left is the 3 bolts that actually hold the hub, which you can Not sure if you'll be able to see it on camera. I'm wiggling that by hand. That bearing is toast. But yeah, they're 12-point bolts back here, 3 of them. Another little trick, add a little heat to the bearing flange around the threads, and it'll make these bolts come out a heck of a lot easier. Now I went on and hit the threads, or the exposed threads, with a little PB blaster, WD-40, anything like that'll work. You're going to need a 12-point 13mm for these bolts. I usually just do this by hand with a 1/2-inch ratchet. Now this is where it usually gets interesting for people. If these hubs have been in here for a while, if they're original, they'll very likely will be seized to the knuckle. So it will take some effort to get these off. These here haven't been on very long. As you can see, I can pull them off by hand. That's also because I use anti-seize on everything, and it comes apart real nice. But yeah. One trash bearing down. Let's see here. I won't be able to show you on camera, I don't think. But I can move this by hand. Bearing's completely dry. So, yeah, that one's trash. I'm gonna go on and clean all this mud and stuff out of here, and put a little anti-seize on everything, and get ready to go back together. So here is our Timken replacement hub. It is ready to go in. I did not have any anti-seize, so I just cleaned this up, used a good synthetic grease on everything. Now I'm ready to go back together. Just like so. A little blue thread locker on your mount bolts. Oh, a lot of blue thread locker on your mount bolts. Also, now would be a good time if you haven't, go on and replace your axle shaft U-joints. If they're original, replace them, because they're likely worn out. All you gotta do is pull the axle shaft out from the point of having this hub off. It doesn't take 10-15 minutes to change those out. Like I said, these are Chromoly shafts, and the U-joints probably only have 5,000 miles or so on them, so they feel great. Not gonna change them. Snug these down with the ratchet. Now we'll go back and torque these to spec. Then we can go on and start reassembling everything out here. Torque spec on these through bolts, 70 to 90 foot-pounds. It's got a pretty wide range. It's not super critical. Tight if you don't have a good torque wrench. This nut's 175 foot-pounds, and it is pretty critical. Most people just gun these down with an impact. I wouldn't, because it does set the preload on the bearing, and it could potentially kill the bearing faster than it would otherwise. So, go on and throw our nut back on here. And I will have to put the rotor on, and I usually slide a big screwdriver or something down in the cooling vanes of the rotor, lock it up against the caliper slides or the pad slides here. That way it can't turn, and go on and torque this down. Spring washer goes back on. Safety nut goes on over that. Just be sure to line up your cotter pin hole with one of the grooves. You might have to rotate this around to find the best fit. And fold your cotter pin over. And there we go. All that's left now is to put the caliper back on. Be sure to lubricate the caliper mount bolts like I said. Tire and wheel can go back on, and this side is done. If you are running wheel spacers, here's what I like to do. I'll run a little blue Loctite on the threads of the actual hub, and then torque everything down. In this case, 115 foot-pounds is what we're going to call it. There we go. And there we have it. This side's all back together. I did misspeak. The caliper actually slides on a bushing, not on the bolt. I do still grease the bolt to keep it from getting seized inside that bushing. Use a little blue Loctite on the threads, snug them up. They don't have to be super tight. I do grease where the caliper or where the pads slide as well, just to prevent any future brake sticking issues. But yeah, so I'm gonna go on and knock the other side out. Still need to finish servicing the front diff, which isn't a big deal. I'm just going to wipe it out and make sure there's no metal in it. I don't see any issues. I checked the ring gear over. Don't see any chipped teeth or anything like that. No metal was in the gear cover. And the oil looked fairly clean, which was surprising. But yeah, I'm going to leave you guys here. If you want to support the channel, there's a PayPal account set up. Link to that is in every video description. If you would, hit that like button. It helps us out and doesn't cost you anything. If you have any comments, questions, complaints, drop them in the comment section below. I do my best to answer those as quickly as I can and try and keep up on all those. But yeah, if you haven't already, please subscribe. We appreciate you watching. Got the passenger side wrapped up. Went on and greased everything. Which, by the way, if you need brakes or anything like that, just go on and do it now. Make the job easier. But this side was worse as far as wear goes. The axle nut had actually started backing off. It had twisted off the cotter pin, and the safety nut was barely hanging on. It hadn't come loose yet, but it was trying to. And I'll sit you down here. Here was a bearing that came off that side. I'd say she was spent.